I was lucky in that I was selected back in the early 60s to be part of the NASA team designated to do the Apollo program, which many of you think is maybe a trip to the moon to gather rocks and get soil samples. But to be honest, it was Johnson and Kennedy's idea to close the missile gap that we had with the Soviet Union, our arch competitors in the Cold War, to show that the United States, capitalism, and our way of life was superior to the totalitarianism that existed in those countries at that time by sending the people to land on the moon. And I was further lucky to be picked to fly on the Apollo 8 flight, which, as Doug said, was Christmas time of 1968, the first time human beings actually left the Earth and traveled to another planet, if you will. And in doing that, I was able to see our beautiful planet from a slightly different perspective. It's still beautiful from shuttle and space station altitudes, but it's much more in your face at that time. And in contrast, from the Earth to the moon, you can blot it out with your thumb, but it's basically the size of your fist in arm's length. And so besides taking what's become the iconic Earthrise picture, I'm not a photographer, you got an Emmy, but it was almost fraudulent. It's kind of like real estate, it's location, location, location. I snapped off some pictures with color film and a long lens that so did the other crewmen, but they didn't have color or a long lens. I kept that to myself. And NASA selected this picture to go on the stamp, become the Earthrise picture, which was selected by Time Life, Photography Magazine, etc., as at least one of the 10 top influential photographs of the 20th century, and it was on the cover of Life magazine for that time. But what has attracted me to the B612, and I'm a two-day expert. I heard about it some years ago from my Apollo 9 colleague, Rusty Schweikert, but didn't really look into it. Then had a chance to talk to Dr. Liu, and I thought, you know, that really sounds like something that we as humanity ought to be doing. NASA's not doing it. You can ask why, I don't know. They've got some problems back there, a lot of departments. But these civilians, if you will, have stepped forward and in my mind are doing something with their post-space careers that I view as quite significant, and I'm honored to be a small part of it. But you can imagine that if the Earth is that big at arm's length from lunar distances, apply a little basic math. You Razorback High School geologists or geometrists. If it's 10 lunar distances, which as you know is hardly going anywhere in space, that fist is now 1/10 the size. And you go 100 lunar distances, which still not even close to Mars, the Earth dwindles to a grain of sand. And so this fragile planet not only is delicate and fragile, it's very small. It's physically basically insignificant compared on a solar system or certainly on a galactic scale. But of course that's where humans originated, at least in my theory. We evolved, and therefore quite important to us as human beings. And to the degree that human beings are threatened by a rogue astronaut now and then, I think we ought to know how threatened are we, and what is the significance, and if the threat is bigger than is big enough to be worrying about, which I think it is, then what can we do about it? And as Dr. Liu and Dr. Jones have